Chapter 51, Heaven's Path Golden Body. By the corner, books were stacked densely on the bookshelves and they were all about cultivation techniques and related subjects. There were manuals on Fighter 1 Dan, 2 Dan, 3 Dan and 4 Dan. Similar to Hongshan Academy, the higher the tier was, the less the number of books there were on it. As for Fighter 6 Dan manuals, there were only about 10 books or so on it. The number of books may be few, but it beats having none at all. Initially, he thought that it would be like the Compendium Pavilion and that he would be able to find a few hundred or even 1,000 books here for his choosing. Now, it was clear to see that he was overthinking it. However, after pondering over it for a moment, the reason for the difference between the two became apparent to him. Everyone had a different physique, and thus, the suitable cultivation technique for them differed from one individual to the other. Thus, it was clear that the academy would require a huge amount of secret manuals and books so as to ensure that there were sufficient resources for the teachers to cater to the needs of their students, as well as to expand their horizons. However, for an individual, they only required 1 or 2 cultivation techniques suited for them. It was already considered a huge collection for Lu Chen to have over 10 books on Fighter 6 Dan cultivation techniques. Casually picking up the 10 books, he flipped through them lightly, hualala, and corresponding secret manuals appeared in his mind. Why? Are these cultivation techniques too inferior to appeal to you? Seeing the youngster pick those books up, flip through them and put them down before taking a good look at the contents, Master Lu Chen was slightly bewildered. That's not it. I am just taking a casual look. Zhang Xuan shook his head, scanning the surrounding once again. He affirmed that there were only these few books in here. Just as he was about to take his leave from the study, he suddenly caught sight of a pile of manuals placed not too far away from his current position. Curious, he asked, these are left behind by the disappointing son of mine. He likes brute strength, so he collected quite a few secret manuals on enhancing one's physical strength. In fact, he even went to the kingdom's book collection vault and moved all related books here. Master Lu Chen smiled bitterly. In the cultivation of a fighter, Zenki is the most important factor of all. One's physical body only plays a small role in it, and it is not worth mentioning at all. Although there was the Piga Elm, which tempered one's skin and bones in a fighter's cultivation, what truly mattered was still Zenki. Only when one's Zenki was pure and concentrated could they be truly strong. In the eyes of most cultivators, the physical body was just an auxiliary tool to one's strength, and was of little importance. Can I take a look? Seeing the thousands of secret manuals on heightening the strength of one's physical body, Zhang Xuan felt a little moved. Thus, he couldn't resist the urge to ask Master Lu Chen for permission to browse through them. He possessed the library of Heaven's Path, so he didn't need the cultivation techniques in his possession to be profound. Only with sufficient quantity would he be able to extract the essence of each to authenticate the true and the false, and distill the truly useful portions from each of them. Even though training one's physical body might seem to be unimportant, and it might be unable to allow one's strength to soar up rapidly, if there were these many books to correct the errors and point out the correct path, the effects might turn out to be significant. Anyway, he didn't have sufficient books in his hands on 6 Dan cultivation technique for him to raise his cultivation realm, so he might as well flip through these first. Perhaps he might even get some pointers on it from the information contained within them. Little brother, feel free. Master Lu Chen smiled. Since he had already brought him in, he wouldn't be stingy about it, allowing him to browse through the books. I will be impertinent then. Zhang Xuan nodded his head and walked over to the pile of manuals just like before. He casually flipped through them. Hualala. Hualala. He is looking at his actions by the side. Master Lu Chen was bewildered. I thought that he wanted to read the books. What is he doing, flipping through them like that? Could it be that these books do not fit his taste? That makes sense though, given how he is trying to look for Fighter 6 Dan cultivation techniques. He is probably already at Fighter 5 Dan pinnacle given his current strength. He has already undergone the Piga Elm, and it matters not whether he trains his physical body or not. Perhaps, he might be browsing through them out of curiosity. Coming to a realization, he no longer bothered with it, casually picking up a treasured painting left behind by Master. He examined it attentively. Zhang Xuan finished flipping through that pile of physical body enhancement techniques within 10 minutes or so. The correct cultivation method. Thousands of manuals appeared in the library. Zhang Xuan's mind jolted and light enveloped his sight. Then, a flawless manual appeared in his mind. Similar to the cultivation technique manuals from before, the book contained the perfect sequence of the correct methods recorded in the thousands of books. Let me take a look. Flipping over the cover, a line of words assaulted him and entered his mind. Zenki is reminiscent of water, whereas the physical body is the bucket containing the water. With a sturdy bucket, one can fill more water, and the quality of which would be higher. The opening verse caused him to feel enlightened. That's right. Zhang Xuan's eyes lit up. Previously, his thoughts were like the others. He felt that it was of no importance whether he cultivated his physical body or not. What truly mattered was his Zenki cultivation. Only upon reading this did he realize how shallow his thinking was. If one loses their skin, where can their hairs lodge into? The same goes for the relationship between Zenki and one's physical body. Only a powerful physical body is capable of withstanding violent Zenki strength to exert even greater prowess. Feeling as though a door had just opened before him, Zhang Xuan couldn't resist the urge to read on. The more he read, the more exhilarated he felt. The Zenki within his body subconsciously followed the method recorded in the book and flowed continuously. Jeji. Jeji. Under the flow of Zenki, his physical body, which wasn't weak from the start, evolved once again. His muscle fibers thickened and his skin membrane became more sturdy. His body evolved towards a much more correct and rational path. Kaka. Kaka. As his mind was absorbed in the explanations contained within the book, Zhang Xuan wasn't aware of the astounding changes that were occurring within his physical body. It was as though an infrastructure had been washed with molten metal, his body gradually becoming a powerful weapon that surpassed that of ordinary humans. As expected of a technique filtered by the library, it is indeed formidable. From now on, I will call this Heaven's Path Golden Body. An hour later, Zhang Xuan finally finished his book. His Zenki had also circulated a single time through his body according to the methods recorded in the book. Weng. After he finishes naming the book glowed radiantly and 4 large words appeared on the cover of the book: Heaven's Path Golden Body. In the future, I will have to make sure to train in it properly. I am already done training. After finishing the book, just when he had decided to cultivate using the methods recorded on it after returning, he realized that he had unknowingly completed the cultivation of this body enhancement technique while looking through it. That was to say, he had mastered this body enhancement cultivation technique. There are no errors in the cultivation techniques of Heaven's Path, thus the pace of training is swift. Even though I knew this beforehand, never would have I expected that I would be able to master Heaven's Path Golden Body unknowingly like this, with the experience from Heaven's Path Divine Art. He knew that a flawless cultivation technique was much more effective and allowed one to cultivate at an extremely rapid speed. Thus he had expected the cultivation of the Heaven's Path Golden Body to not be too difficult as well. Just that, he never imagined that he would complete the cultivation just by reading through the contents of it once. At this moment, he didn't know whether he should laugh or cry. Forget it. Even though I wasn't able to find sufficient Fighter 6 Dan cultivation techniques, my strength should have increased significantly with this set of physical body enhancement cultivation technique. Coming to Master Lu Chen's house, he might not have accomplished his objective of finding sufficient Fighter 6 Dan cultivation techniques, but in exchange, he received the Heaven's Path Golden Body, so it was still a meaningful trip. Just that, the physical body was different from Zenki. Zenki could be easily quantified and it wasn't difficult to gauge how much strength one possessed after one was done with one's training. On the other hand, muscles were hidden beneath the skin, so it was hard to measure one's improvement clearly. That's to say, even though he had mastered Heaven's Path Golden Body, he had no idea how strong he had grown, or even whether his physical body had grown stronger or not. Of course, this wasn't important since he was successfully completed his cultivation of it. He could simply find a strength measuring rock pillar when he returned to test his strength. What is little brother Zhang Xuan doing? At this moment, Master Lu Chen, who accompanied him here, had his mind filled with question marks. While reading his book, he sneaked glances towards the other party occasionally after flipping through the manuals. This fellow had been standing on the spot without moving at all for 2 whole hours by now. What the heck is he doing? Could it be that he has read too many books and went berserk? It isn't like this kind of situation has never happened before. In the past, there was an extremely talented genius in Danxuan Kingdom. The cultivation techniques and battle techniques that took other people 2 to 3 years to learn, he only took 2 to 3 days. This was precisely the reason why he wanted to learn all of the cultivation techniques and battle techniques to piece them together so as to create a set of new skills in the end. Before a new mystical cultivation technique could be born, he went berserk. The youngster before him was able to raise his level of cultivation to Fighter 5 Dan pinnacle at such a young age. At the same time, he possessed a master level competency in painting. Could it be that just like that senior, he got greedy and some problems popped up within him? Little brother, filled with suspicions, he couldn't hold it in any longer. Thus, he stepped forward and tried to interrupt Zhang Xuan's thoughts to prevent him from sinking in even deeper. Just as Zhang Xuan was impressed over the might of the Heaven's Path Divine Art, he heard a shout, and following which, a palm nudged his body. Oh, Master Lu Chen. Returning back to his consciousness, he hurriedly turned around and his shoulders accidentally bumped into the latter. Peng. A deep echo resounded, and Master Lu Chen was sent flying instantaneously. His back knocked onto a bookshelf, and the books scattered on the floor. Zenki, True Essence, Chapter 52, Master Lu Chen on the verge of tears. Ah? Zhang Xuan was taken aback. He didn't turn around that quickly, neither did he use that much strength. Why did Master Lu Chen fly backward? Could he be jumping around for fun? Master. He rushed forward to help the other party up. He placed his palm on the back of Master Lu Chen's body to support him up. I'm fine. Su. Before his words could escape his mouth, Master Lu Chen felt his entire body go weightless as he somersaulted forward. His head knocked into another bookshelf, causing his face to be showered with books. The master was on the verge of tears. Are you playing with me? Must you use so much strength to help me up? Master. Seeing his current state, Zhang Xuan rushed forward to continue helping him up. Upon seeing this sight, Master Lu Chen hurriedly struggled upwards and said, You don't come over, I can do it myself. King. Zhang Xuan could only stop on the spot. He blinked his eyes as he looked at the elderly before him. Doubtfully he couldn't help but ask the question that had been plaguing his mind. Master, are you jumping around for fun? Jumping around for fun? Master Lu Chen almost cried on the spot. The heck, you are the one who is jumping around for fun. Your whole family is jumping around for fun. I am a master painter, an elegant person. How bored must I be to be jumping around for fun? Besides, even if I wanted to play, I won't be doing it here. My collection of books, my treasures, are here. Master Lu Chen felt a stifling sensation in his chest, which caused him to be short of breath. Why? Are you feeling uncomfortable in your chest? Zhang Xuan walked forward to aid him, and he pounded his back to relieve his discomfort. No, Peng. Before Master Lu Chen could finish his words, Zhang Xuan's fist landed on his back, causing his eyes to narrow. Su. He flew forward and crashed into the wall of the study, creating a huge crevice on it. Master. Seeing him charge ahead, Zhang Xuan scratched his head in bewilderment. What is this master trying to do? Jumping backward a moment ago and jumping forward now. Is he afflicted with epilepsy? If his epilepsy was acting up, it wouldn't do for Zhang Xuan to ignore his current situation. He immediately rushed forward towards Lu Chen to try to help him up again. Don't come over here. Master Lu Chen wiped the fresh blood off the corner of his lips and hurriedly retreated. He stared at the youngster before him as though staring at a monster, and he looked as though he would cry at any moment. I only felt a coldness in my heart. I am not trying to seek death. Your Pound Dial, my old arms, my old legs. Master, what is going on? Seeing him in such a state, Zhang Xuan asked, "You acted so maturely a moment ago, so why would you pounce and leap around suddenly? What are you trying to do? What is going on?" Master Lu Chen stared at him fearfully as tears start to fall from his eyes. "You don't know what is going on? Fearing that you might have gone berserk, I came forward to remind you out of goodwill, yet, with a single turn, you sent me flying. Then, you ran over to push me forward. The final blow was the most vicious of them all. A straight pound at my back. If it weren't for the slight cultivation that I possess, I might have lost my life already. Yet, you dare to ask me what is going on?" Right when he was about to lash out, he saw the puzzled look on the youngster and he didn't seem like he was lying. A thought flashed through his mind and he recalled something with his eyes filled with disbelief. He asked, "You have just achieved a breakthrough?" "Indeed." Zhang Xuan nodded his head. Mastering the Heaven's Path Golden Body should be considered as a type of breakthrough. But even if it's a breakthrough, it is impossible for one to improve so swiftly. Master Lu Chen finally understood what was happening, but he still dared not believe it. There were a few people who used special means to allow their cultivation to leap in an instant after the gigantic soar in strength. Their bodies were unable to adapt to the difference in strength in the short run, causing them to be unable to control their might. What seemed like their normal exertion of strength would become an attack of full strength in the eyes of others. When one who possessed 100 kilograms of strength exerted a tenth of their strength, it would only be 10 kilograms with such strength. They were able to freely lift cups and such without much hindrance. However, if one tried to use the same ratio of strength to lift a cup after his strength had suddenly surged to 10,000 kilograms, the overwhelming strength of 1,000 kilograms would exceed the durability of the cup and cause it to shatter instantly. It was highly possible that this was the case with Zhang Xuan, as the person in question wasn't even aware of how much his strength had grown. It was natural that Lu Chen would be unable to take it when he was using his previous strength ratio to operate. He had read of this condition in books before, and it would take a period of time before the person in question was able to adapt to the difference in strength. Initially, he thought that it was only a legend. Never would he have thought that such a thing really existed. Just that, he found it unbelievable that the strength of this fellow would surge by simply after flipping through some books and daydreaming away afterwards. Could this be a sudden leap due to his deep accumulation? He might have happened to read something which caused his enlightenment, allowing him to break through in an instant. If that was the case, then his luck was really way too bad. "Follow me to the lounge." While holding doubts in his mind, Master Lu Chen didn't say anything more and instead led the way back to the lounge. It was easy to tell whether the situation was as he suspected. He only needed to find a strength measuring rock pillar for Zhang Xuan to test his strength on. Since the youngster was seeking for Fighter 6 Dan cultivation techniques, then he surely had yet to break through Peak Realm since he had not reached Fighter 6 Dan. Then as a Fighter 5 Dan Pinnacle, he could only possess a maximum of 4 Ding of strength. If his strength were to exceed this amount, this would mean that he had improved significantly. If so, the situation back then could be explained. In the lounge, Huang Yu and Bei Aixun have yet to leave. They were still sitting in the living room as they stared in the direction of the study anxiously. They came here with a request, but Master Lu Chen took Zhang Xuan away with him right after he finished testing him, not even giving them an opportunity to speak at the same time. It wasn't appropriate for them to leave abruptly, so they could only continue waiting patiently. "Xiao Yu, just now that Master Zhang Xuan, has he really reached Fighter 5 Dan Pinnacle?" Bei Aixun no longer viewed Zhang Xuan hostilely as he did previously. On the contrary, his voice held a tinge of excitement. Actually, he wasn't interested in painting at all. If it wasn't for his father coercing him, he definitely would not have come here. What truly interested him was cultivating. He only felt excitement upon meeting powerful people. All along, he had thought of himself as a genius. Despite being just 18 this year, he had already reached Fighter 5 Dan Pinnacle. There weren't many in the capital who could compete with him in terms of cultivation speed. Yet, he didn't expect that a seemingly average young man who wasn't much older than him would have reached such a realm as well. How could he not feel excited over this? "I'm not sure as well. I've already told you that he only came to my store to buy books. I don't know much about him as well. However, since he is looking for Fighter 6 Dan cultivation techniques, he should have already reached Fighter 5 Dan Pinnacle," Huang Yu said. As Zhang Xuan had yet to make a move, they weren't very sure about Zhang Xuan's exact prowess. However, since he was looking for 6 Dan manuals, it was very probable that he had already reached 5 Dan Pinnacle. Otherwise, there was no point to him looking for such a high-tier manual. To be able to reach such a level at a young age, I wonder how powerful he is. Let me try it out myself later. Bei Aixun tittered. He was a battle maniac, and his heart could no longer suppress the urge to duel with someone of the same age who had attained the same level as him. Da. Just as the two of them were speaking, someone walked over. Turning around to take a look, the both of them were taken aback. Master Lu Chen, who was still incomparably elegant a moment ago, was currently extremely gloomy and red blood filled his entire face as he walked over disheveled. Chapter 53, Bei Aixun's Breakdown. This. The crowd stared at one another, dumbfounded. This is Master Lu Chen, the Emperor's tutor, who dares to lay his hands on him, beating him into such a state. Besides, didn't you two go to the study? Why did he return like this? Could it be that they didn't go to the study to read books, but to fight? The elegant Master Lu Chen has such interest? I'm fine. Master Lu Chen waved his hands awkwardly. After all, he couldn't possibly say that Zhang Xuan had just achieved a breakthrough and unintentionally injured him due to the lack of control in his strength. He also knew that it would be difficult to explain. Thus, Master Lu Chen walked over to the main seat, then turned to look at Uncle Cheng and said, "Ah Cheng, go and fetch a strength measuring rock pillar over." He was a master painter, not a fighter. Thus, no strength measuring rock pillars were placed in his lounge. However, as this item was related to one's cultivation, there were still a few of them in his house, so it would be fine bringing one over. Yes. Despite being unsure of what his master was up to, Uncle Cheng still nodded his head and retreated out of the room. "Master Zhang, have you really reached Fighter 5 Dan Pinnacle?" Upon seeing the room turn silent, Bei Ixun couldn't resist walking up towards him with an excited expression. It might be inconvenient to speak of it in the academy, but it wasn't any secret here, so there's no need for Zhang Xuan to conceal the fact. I'm also on the same level. May I exchange some blows with you? Hearing the young man's confirmation, Bei Ixun's eyes burned with enthusiasm. Bei Ixun, what are you doing? Look at where you are. Taken aback, Huang Yu quickly tried to advise him otherwise. Master Lu Chen was an elegant person, and he hated people arguing and fighting before him. Don't you think that it's a joke to be issuing a challenge in his lounge? It was just as Huang Yu said. Lu Chen didn't like others to be brandishing their spears and swords before him. However, while the strength measuring rock pillar wasn't here yet, the best way to test whether Zhang Xuan had improved was through Bei Ixun. He was aware of the fact that the latter had reached Fighter 5 Dan pinnacle. With the same level of cultivation, he should be able to see whether Zhang Xuan's strength had surged. At this point, he raised his head and said, I don't have any objections if it is just ordinary sparring. However, don't go too far. Great. Initially, Bei Ixun thought that Master Lu Chen would object to it. However, contrary to his expectation, he approved. Bei Ixun almost leapt up due to overwhelming excitement. With a delighted expression, he took 2 steps towards the center of the lounge and with a cool pose, he beckoned Zhang Xuan come. Alright. Zhang Xuan had just completed his cultivation of Heaven's Path Golden Body and he was curious to know how far his strength has progressed as well. Thus, he didn't reject the other party's challenge and walked over to the center of the lounge as well. The strength behind my fists are great, so be careful. With hardened eyes, Bei Ixun no longer had that gentlemanly look he usually had, and replacing it was the aura of a powerful person unmatched by anyone. As someone on the level of Fighter 5 Dan pinnacle, in terms of strength, he was above even Shang Bin. Huala. After gathering his might, Bei Ixun stepped forward with his strength as a sword, the shockwave of his punch as a blade. He sent a jab straight towards Zhang Xuan to test his level of cultivation. Zhang Xuan didn't bother to look at the flaws on Bei Ixun compiled in the Library of Heaven's Path, and instead, he faced his fist with one of his own. The 2 fists connected mid-air and Zhang Xuan frowned. Why is the strength behind his fist so lacking? Could it be that he isn't Fighter 5 Dan pinnacle? Zhang Xuan's fist went straight through the other party's fist without slowing at all, completely overpowering him, as though a stone had met with a bubble. Thinking that the other party wasn't well prepared and had yet to exert his full strength yet, Zhang Xuan quickly reduced his strength by half. Even so, Bei Ixun's face paled and he was sent flying like a rubber ball. So, he only came to a stop when his back crashed onto a pillar forcefully. Why aren't you using your full strength? Retracting his fist, Zhang Xuan walked forward and stretched out his hand to help the latter up. Don't. Upon seeing this sight, Master Lu Chen's eyes narrowed. He immediately tried to stop them, but he was too late. So, Bei Ixun, who was pulled by the young man, flew away like a kite who had its string snapped with a whistle of the wind. He flew in the air once again. Punchy. After flying for a dozen meters, his face crashed into the wall and fresh blood spurted out from his mouth and nose. Bei Ixun almost cried on the spot. Big brother, I know that I'm not a match for you, but you don't have to be so merciless. My dashing features, my face, why are you? Seeing Bei Ixun fly away with a pull of his, Zhang Xuan scratched his head with an innocent look. What are they doing? First Master Lu Chen, and now Bei Ixun. Is it really alright for the both of you to be leaping around? If the 2 of them were to know the thoughts that were running through his mind, they would have surely vomited blood on the spot out of depression. You are the one who is leaping around. We were thrown by you. Alright. This fellow, standing by the side, Huang Yu's eyebrows twitched and she found her head unable to cope. Bei Ixun could be considered one of the outstanding ones among the younger generation except for a few others. He was practically unmatched. This was precisely the reason why he cultivated a competitive but reluctant to admit defeat personality. He thought that the latter would not be able to match up to him in a duel, but never did he imagine that he would be sent flying in a single punch. He lost thoroughly. This fellow looks ordinary, but how does he possess such overwhelming might? Are you alright? Unsure of what the others were thinking about, Zhang Xuan walked up to Bei Ixun with an apologetic look. I'm fine. Bei Ixun struggled upwards and patted the dust off his clothes. As Fighter 5 Dan who had tempered his bones and skin, small wounds like these did not pose a problem. Great, I realized that you have not used your full strength previously. How about this? Let's spar once more with you using your full strength. Zhang Xuan said with a serious expression. Again? Bei Ixun's face twitched and he almost cried. If we were to continue fighting, I might die here. He immediately waved his hand and said, no need. Master is indeed stronger than me. I don't think there's a need to continue sparring. There's no need to be courteous. It is just friendly sparring, so you don't have to be so restrained. Also, don't call me master. That sounds so distant. Zhang Xuan thought that the other party was acting cautiously due to his identity as Master Lu Chen's peer, causing his reluctance to give his all in the spar, thus resulting in his weakness as perceived by Zhang Xuan. When his cultivation had just reached Fighter 5 Dan pinnacle, he crossed blows with Yao Han, and the latter gave him a lot of pressure through his formidable strength. Yao Han's cultivation realm was higher than Bei Ixun, but as there wasn't too much of a difference between the two, he thought that it would be the same as when he faced him. Yet, Bei Ixun was sent flying with a single fist. Finding it unbelievable, he attributed it to him not exerting his full strength. Otherwise, with his 8 ding of strength, it was impossible for him to send a Fighter 5 Dan pinnacle who possessed 4 ding of strength flying with a single fist. Spar? Bei Ixun trembled in fear. You call this sparring? With just that single fist of yours, I almost ascended to the heavens. You know that? Besides, as a fellow peer of Grandpa Lu Chen, what do I call you if not master? A thought flashed through his mind and his face twitched, seemingly on the verge of tears. Since you said that it feels distant calling you master, then why don't I call you Grandpa? Grandpa Zhang, I admit my mistake, okay? I shouldn't have been so hostile towards you, so I beg of you stop asking me to spar with you. The strength measuring rock pillar is here. At this moment, Uncle Cheng walked over and saw such a sight unfolding before him. Upon hearing Baekzun's shouting plea, he became petrified on the spot. What? Chapter 54, Hongjin Pearl Fruit. Who is this? The sole son of the number one authoritative subject of Tangxuan Kingdom, Zenon Wang. For him to be crying Zhang Xuan as his grandpa. Surely, I am hearing things. Uncle Cheng only felt his vision blurring before him and almost lost consciousness. I just stepped away for a moment to grab a strength measuring rock pillar. What happened? Can anyone enlighten me? Cough cough. All right, little brother Zhang Xuan. There are plenty of opportunities for the both of you to spar in the future. Baekzun is injured and needs to regulate his cultivation for a while. Anyway, since the strength measuring rock pillar is already here, I think it would be best for you to try out your strength first. Sensing the awkwardness of the situation, Master Lu Chen quickly stepped in. Alright. Seeing that Baekzun was unwilling to spar, Zhang Xuan shook his head in disappointment. He looked at the strength measuring rock pillar, which was just inserted into a crevice on the ground, and walked over to it with a slight smile. He said, actually, I have tested my strength yesterday and it was about 4 ding or so. There probably wasn't much of a difference testing it today. It was just this morning that he had beaten Yao Han into a pig head. Before that, he had tested his strength and had ascertained it to be 8 ding. He had been busy the entire day. Furthermore, without a cultivation technique for him to cultivate, not a single one of his Aku points have been broken through yet. Thus, there shouldn't be a rise in his strength although he had cultivated the Heaven's Path Golden Body. In Zhang Xuan's opinion, even if there was an improvement with his physical body, it couldn't possibly rival up to the significance of Zenki in determining one's might. As for why he said that his strength was 4 ding, it was because this was the standard strength that Dinglai Realm Pinnacle could possess. He didn't want to reveal too much of his secrets. At worst, he just had to hold back half of his strength when testing it later on. Since the pillar has been brought here, give it a try. Master Lu Chen said. Alright. Zhang Xuan smiled as he accepted the offer with the intention to only use half of his strength. His fist flew towards the rock pillar before him. His fist propelled forward like a lightning strike, swift and fierce, and the shockwave of his fist caused the wind to rustle. Peng. Light shone from the pillar and figures started to slowly appear on it. Look, as I said, Fording seeing the figures that had floated onto the surface of the pillar, Zhang Xuan waved his hands and turned around to look at the others with a smile. However, before he could finish his words, he saw Baekzun, Huang Yu, Master Lu Chen and Uncle Chen looked at him as though he was a monster. Every single one of their eyes was almost popping out of their sockets. What's the matter? Zhang Xuan frowned. He lowered his head to look at himself. There shouldn't be anything off about him though. Look at the strength measuring rock pillar again. Huang Yu said in agitation. What is wrong with the strength measuring rock pillar? Isn't it just 4 ding? Do you all have to be so shocked? Turning around to take a look, Zhang Xuan's body staggered and he almost fell to the floor, unsure of when it happened. But the number 9 had appeared behind the number 4 that he saw previously. Putting it together, 49. The fist that I just threw had the strength of 49 ding? Zhang Xuan was also astonished. When he tested it this morning, he only had 8 ding of strength. Furthermore, he intentionally restrained half of his strength when striking on the rock pillar, so how could he possibly reach a might of 49 ding? Didn't this mean that if he didn't contain his strength, his fist could hold a might of almost 100 ding behind it? A fighter 5 Dan Dinglai Realm Pinnacle possessed 4 ding of strength, while the strength of a Pixie Realm Pinnacle expert wouldn't exceed 80 ding to be capable of hitting 100 ding with his fist. Didn't this mean that his strength is equal to a fighter 6 Dan Pixie Realm expert, surpassing the latter even? Could it be that the strength measuring rock pillar is malfunctioning? A thought flashed through his mind and Zhang Xuan couldn't resist raising his doubt. The rock pillar isn't malfunctioning. Didn't you achieve a breakthrough in the study previously? It caused your strength to soar. Furthermore, you have yet to adapt to your newfound strength. That's why you thrashed Baekzun so overwhelmingly. Seeing his thoughts being verified, Master Lu Chen explained. Initially, he wanted to say that he himself was beaten into a pulp by Zhang Xuan, but he stopped at the crucial point. After all, no matter what, he was still a master and had to consider his reputation. A breakthrough. An inflation from 4 ding to 49 ding? It can't be that you broke through 45 Aku points at once. It was one thing to not hear his explanation, but the moment they heard it, Baekzun and Huang Yu almost fainted on the spot. Surely you are jesting? At Fighter 6 Dan Pixie Realm, one can open up his Aku points to raise one's cultivation. For every Aku point opened, one will gain 1 ding of strength. It is said that there is a total of 108 Aku points in the human body, however, only 72 of which can be opened. Furthermore, there is a specific order to opening these Aku points due to the difference in physique for every individual. They require a different sequence in breaking through them to achieve the optimal effect. If one fails to find the ideal sequence, they could possibly only end up opening 30 to 40 Aku points in their life and find themselves unable to advance forward. Normally, one breaks through them one by one, and one's strength will increase slowly 1 ding at a time. For Zhang Xuan's strength to increase by 45 ding in an instant. Dude, you are about to bash through the heavens. It is not that I have never seen people breaking through, but I have never seen someone break through in such a way. Actually, it wasn't just the others who were giddy and in a state of disbelief. Even Zhang Xuan himself didn't know what was going on. Was such a massive improvement induced just from cultivating Heaven's Path Golden Body, allowing his strength to increase by 90 ding instantaneously? Normally, when he casually sent Master Lu Chen flying and defeated Baekzun, he should have understood how much of an improvement he had made and how much his strength had grown by, and not be as ignorant as he is now. However, as a transcender and someone who had just started cultivating 2 days ago, it was already incredible that he was able to control his cultivation to exert the correct amount of strength. Going into the specifics to control his strength, so as to manipulate it as he pleases, was simply expecting too much of him. This was just like an ordinary person who was suddenly granted superhuman strength. He wouldn't be able to get used to it initially, and, perhaps, might even feel slightly lost about the matter. This was exactly the situation that was occurring with Zhang Xuan initially. He only possessed 8 ding of strength, however, it suddenly increased by 90 ding, an increment of more than tenfold. Furthermore, as this increment originated from his physical body, it was undetectable. Rather, it would be weird if he knew it in advance. It was already a blessing for him to not have reduced Bai Xun into a lump of meat. Little brother Zhang, you can't possibly have opened 45 Aku points just now? Seeing him in a daze, Master Lu Chen asked slowly. It was unheard of to open 45 Aku points in an instant, but if that wasn't the case, where could have the sudden boost of strength possibly came from? I am still Dinglai Realm Pinnacle. My cultivation has yet to advance, just that my physical body grew stronger by a bit. Zhang Xuan said. Physical body? Master Lu Chen was astounded, not daring to believe what he had just heard. I have heard that there are some treasures in the world that allow one's physical body to rival steel when consumed, giving one the strength equivalent to a Pixie Realm Pinnacle. Could it be that it is possible to reach such a level through cultivating one's physical body as well? Kang, I seem to have eaten some unidentifiable fruit today. Initially, I felt my body heat up after eating it, but I didn't pay much heed to it. Perhaps that could be the reason for the sudden increase in the strength of my physical body. Zhang Xuan said. As a member of modern civilization, he understood the logic that possessing a treasure beyond one's ability would attract calamity if he were to acknowledge that he had reached such a level through cultivation. Innumerable people might go red-eyed and try to extort him of his cultivation technique. Perhaps, some might even kidnap him to research on. Since Master Lu Chen had mentioned that there were some treasures that could induce a massive enhancement in one's physical body, he decided to go along with it. Fate, this is truly fate. Master Lu Chen didn't doubt Zhang Xuan's words at all. Actually, it wasn't that he isn't doubtful, but even if he was, he had no choice but to believe Zhang Xuan's words. For one's physical strength to increase by a few dozen ding through 2 hours of cultivation? Wasn't this daydreaming? It was as laughable as trying to get a male to bear children. Rather than believing that nonsense, it was more probable that he might have consumed some treasure. May I know the appearance of the fruit that little brother ate? Master Lu Chen continued asking. Appearance? Zhang Xuan scratched his head. He was spouting nonsense. So how could he have possibly known how it would look like? However, since they have already gotten to this point, keeping silent would seem much more suspicious instead. Thus, he replied, it is a red-colored fruit. Previously, when he was flipping through the books in the Academy's Compendium Pavilion, he recalled seeing a record of a fruit similar to what Lu Chen had just described. The book was an epic of a person's travels, and the character in it had eaten a red-colored fruit and had his strength raised massively. At this moment, he could only blindly try his luck. Red-colored? Could it be crimson-colored? Indeed, it is that thing. Master Lu Chen seemed to have thought of something and his breathing hastened. Master knows of it. It is the Hongjin Pearl fruit. Legend has it that consuming it will allow one's physical body to soar rapidly, granting one the strength that even a Pixie Realm Pinnacle expert is unable to withstand. Master Lu Chen said excitedly. Hongjin Pearl fruit? Zhang Xuan said with a bizarre look on his face. Could it be that such a thing really exists? Chapter 55. Surrounded. 1. Chatting for a moment longer, Zhang Xuan was questioned on where he obtained the Hongjin Pearl fruit from. He casually replied that he got it from the market, causing Master Lu Chen and the rest to exclaim at his fortune. Right, brother Zhang Xuan, are you a local or? Lu Chen asked. I am a teacher at Hongshan Academy. Zhang Xuan replied. No wonder you possess such strength and a deep understanding towards painting. Master Lu Chen praised him. He turned around to Huang Yu and Bai Xun, who were sitting by the side, and said, painting can mold a person's personality and train their character. Don't let fighting and killing occupy your mind all day long. Since brother Zhang Xuan is a teacher of the academy, go and visit him to learn from him whenever the both of you are free. I will consider giving the person who learns a thing or two from him a pass and give them what they want. Yes. Huang Yu replied with a bitter expression, whereas Bai Xun's eyes were glittering with excitement. Through their crossing of blows, he understood that Zhang Xuan's current ability far surpassed him. To be able to learn from such an expert was definitely much more interesting than simply just learning boring painting. At the very least, he felt more relaxed learning from him than Master Lu Chen. My apologies for the sudden intrusion today. It is getting a little late, so Master, I will be bidding you farewell. I will visit you another day. After accomplishing what he came for, Zhang Xuan decided to take his leave and clasped his hands together towards Lu Chen. This time, you came here to look for Fighter 6 Dan cultivation techniques, but it is a pity that I don't have many of them here. I will speak to Shimsui about this matter a few days later to bring you to the kingdom's book collection vault to browse through them. It just happens that he seems to be out hunting these few days, so he isn't in the capital at the moment. Master Lu Chen said. You have my utmost gratitude, Master. Hearing these words, Zhang Xuan's eyes lit up. It was impossible to find more than a few Fighter 6 Dan cultivation technique manuals at any ordinary location. However, in the kingdom's book collection vault, the location that was reputed to have the most complete collection of books in Tanxian Kingdom, he was surely able to find many of them. If he was able to enter the vault to browse through the Fighter 6 Dan cultivation techniques, he might be able to form Heaven's Path Divine Art and break through successfully. You're too courteous. Lu Chen nodded his head with a smile. Leaving the master's residence, Zhang Xuan headed towards the academy. The sun had already set when he was still having dinner with Shinbairu. At this moment, the moon hung high up in the sky, illuminating the ground with a cold silver glow. Going by the clock of his previous life, it should be around 12 already. Despite the time, he didn't feel fatigued in the least. Instead, his eyes were glowing in exhilaration. The trip to the master's residence was truly worth it. Compiling the Heaven's Path Golden Body has propelled the strengthening of his physical body, causing his prowess to soar with his current cultivation. Even if he were to meet with a Pixie Realm Pinnacle expert, he would be able to easily subdue them. Besides, He also found a dozen books or so on Fighter 6 and cultivation techniques. Even if it was insufficient for him to compile a complete version of Heaven's Path Divine Art, it should still be beneficial to his training. My physical body has already reached 90 ding of strength. If I were to find higher tier physical body enhancement techniques, will I grow even stronger? There might be many different secret manuals on training one's physical body in Master Lu Chen's study, but they were the simplest and most basic cultivation methods. If such books could possess such effects after being compiled by the Library of Heaven's Path, didn't this mean that if he were to assemble together a set of more profound physical body cultivation manuals, the book compiled would be even more incredible? If this was true, his physical body would probably play a significant part in his battle prowess in the future. Just as he was immersing himself in his delight, his ears suddenly quivered. The growth in strength of his physical body had also caused his hearing and vision to sharpen. He suddenly realized that someone was stalking him. His footsteps swayed and he came to a stop. Those friends who are following behind me, come out. I didn't expect that you would be so wary. What is the use of being wary? Lad, you made us lose money. Don't even dream about escaping from us today. Hualala. As his voice trailed off, a few human silhouettes dashed out from the darkness and surrounded him. Every one of them looked at Zhang Xuan coldly, as though staring at a corpse. It's you all? Zhang Xuan recognized them. He recognizes two of those in the group as Master Mo Yang, who was exposed in the market earlier today by him, and the artifact dealer who was working with him. The remaining few should be the supports who were hidden within the crowd. At this moment, Master Mo Yang's face was swollen red and the skin around his eyes was bruised black. A few parts of his clothes were torn off and he no longer possessed the serene and enlightened disposition and appearance from before. In fact, if one were to claim that he was a beggar on the street, people would believe him. Looks like after being exposed, those victims didn't let him off the hook so easily. But that's to be expected as well. After all, which of those who were able to engage in the expensive sport of treasure speculation didn't come from extraordinary families? After realizing that they were scammed, they could already be considered to be kind for not killing him on the spot. The artifact dealer didn't seem to be in a much better state than him. His two eyes were bruised black and two sausage-like swells hung by his mouth, causing his speech to be indistinct. Glaring at Zhang Xuan, the resentment and anger in their gazes were clear to see. This was a ploy that they spent a fortune to set up, only for it to be wrecked by this young man here, not mentioning how they had to spit out the meat that was already in their mouths. They even almost got beaten to death. Thus, it was understandable that they would feel intense resentment against him. You little bastard, you sure ran away fast back then. Let's see where you can run off to now. A maniacal gleam flashed across the eyes of the artifact dealer. You all want to kill me? Noticing the aura of the surroundings growing eerily cold, Zhang Xuan frowned. If you have to blame it for your big mouth for saying things that shouldn't be said in your next life. Remember to keep your mouth in check. Master Mo Yang sneered savagely as he clenched his fists, causing Jia sounds to echo in the surroundings. The reason why their fraud failed was due to this fellow. It took them a while before they managed to find him, so naturally, they wouldn't allow him to escape easily. I'm sorry, but I don't wish to die for now, and neither do I wish to keep my mouth in check. Zhang Xuan said. You don't wish to die? Ruthlessness flickered across in the eyes of Master Mo Yang. This isn't up to you, brothers. Kill him, slice him apart and feed him to the dogs. Roger. With a cold snort, one of the supports stepped forward, and lifting his arms up, he sent a palm down towards Zhang Xuan. The moment he made his move, his cultivation realm was made apparent. Fighter 5 Dan Pinnacle. No wonder he could still escape to Tangxuan Kingdom to conduct fraud even after being outlawed by Loza Kingdom. He did indeed possess some capabilities. If it was yesterday night, even if Zhang Xuan was able to emerge victorious against this fellow, he would have to utilize the strength of the Library of Heaven's Path to exploit his weakness. However, with an overwhelming progress in the strength of his physical body, possessing nearly 100 ding of strength now, Ding Lai Pinnacle meant nothing to him now. Chuckling softly, he sent a slap towards his attacker. You're courting death. Number 4's nickname is Metal Palms. His hands are capable of splitting rocks. Back then, in Loza Kingdom, a Pixie Realm primary stage was killed by a single palm of his, yet this fellow dares to exchange blows with him without any preparation? The ignorant sure are fearless. To think that we were done in by such a fellow, what misfortune. Seeing that fellow going against number 4 without dodging at all, Master Mo Yang and the rest sneered. This support may not seem unexceptional, but his strength isn't for show. His palms are capable of even striking through metal. What does a young man who isn't even 20 mean before that? To face it head on, what else can he be doing other than courting death? Just when they thought that Zhang Xuan would be crippled by the blow, they saw the one whom they called number 4 Metal Palms being as weak as a slab of tofu, unable to withstand Zhang Xuan's blow. His bones shattered and his ribcage sank in as he was blasted away by the force of the blow. His head stabbed onto the ground first, causing him to look like a bulb of wild onion. Chapter 56, Surrounded, 2. So, it seems that he isn't weak. No wonder he is so arrogant. Seeing number 4 being sent flying by a single palm, Master Mo Yang froze for a moment before his expression turned even more savage. Waving his hands grandly, as though he was in control of the entire situation, he said, however, your luck ends here. After which, he turned to look at the artifact dealer by the side and said, end it fast, we still have matters to attend to. The artifact dealer nodded his head and advances forward. Boom. Before he even struck, he already emanated an aura from his body. It was similar to the mountains and the oceans, immeasurable. If one were to close their eyes, they could clearly feel 10 Aku points in the other party's body absorbing and exuding spiritual energy, each of them bright as though they were the stars. Pixie Realm expert. Zhang Xuan was taken aback. At Fighter 6 Dan Pixie Realm, one could start opening up the Aku points within their body to absorb the spiritual energy from the world and refine it for their own usage. At this level of cultivation, regardless of whether it was reaction speed or strength, they would be enhanced significantly in Hongshan Academy. This was the level of strength that Elder possessed. It was beyond his expectations that a scammer possessed such strength. Are you afraid? If so, kneel down, apologize and compensate our losses. Otherwise, death awaits you. Noticing Zhang Xuan's astonishment, he thought that he was apprehensive of his strength. Thus, with a long cry, he stepped forward, reminiscent of a god who governed over life and death. Kneel down? Apologize? Compensate your losses? Zhang Xuan shook his head. I am not that free to be apologizing and giving compensation to a scammer. If you all have such an interest, you all could kneel down to me instead and compensate my losses from your assault today. This way, I can consider letting you all off the hook. What did you say? Is this fellow mad? Master Mo Yang and the artifact owners started to suspect whether this fellow was insane. Our people far outnumber you. Furthermore, we have Pixie realm experts on our side, yet you expect us to kneel down to a lonesome young man like you? What are you trying to act cool for? Besides, compensate your losses for the assault. You have losses, my ass. The head of our number 4 is still lodged into the ground. If we're speaking about losses, ours are significantly greater. Okay? Stop spouting nonsense with him, just kill him. Master Mo Yang gestured. The artifact owner nodded his head, exerting force on the soles of his feet. He charged towards Zhang Xuan with his fingers wide open in the shape of a palm. Hugh! Before he could get close, the rustling of the wind could be heard, as though an eagle trying to prey on a rabbit. It gave others an oppressing sensation, a massive pressure that they were seemingly unable to withstand. It is number 2's battle technique, Soaring Eagle. This battle technique can be considered to be superior even among those in the mortal intermediate tier. Isn't it a little too excessive to be using it to deal with a young lad? It isn't excessive. This lad is able to smack away number 4 with a single palm strike of his. This shows that he is pretty capable as well. However, his luck has come to an end, now that he is facing number 2's Soaring Eagle. Seeing the artifact dealer executing such an incredible technique, the crowd nodded their heads in approval. Soaring Eagle was in the forefront even among the mortal intermediate tier battle techniques the moment it was executed. One would emit a majestic aura, reminiscent of an eagle hunting down a rabbit, leaving his opponent with the impression of mountains and oceans, as well as a feeling of helplessness before such overwhelming might. Even if their leader Master Mo Yang were to encounter it, he would have to retreat temporarily so as to avoid facing it head-on. Soaring Eagle? The moment the other party executed his battle technique, a manual appeared in Zhang Xuan's head, and written on it were the flaws and the history of this artifact dealer. Scanning through it with his consciousness, Zhang Xuan imprinted this information into his mind, and suddenly, a bizarre expression appeared on his face. Due to the lack of time, he couldn't thoroughly ponder over it. The battle technique executed by the artifact dealer was already right before him. A battle technique allowed one to unleash their strength better, thus bringing them to greater heights. As a Pixie realm expert who had opened 10 Aku points, the artifact dealer wasn't weak at all. Complemented with the mortal intermediate tier battle technique, he carried with him a very powerful and oppressive aura. A savage smile appearing on his face was similar to the radiance of a flower. However, before this flower could finish blooming, his eyes narrowed and a ghastly cry sounded. A tragic howl echoed across the night sky, as though a stone grinder had crushed the ears of a dog. What happened? At the very start, Master Mo Yang and the rest thought that Zhang Xuan would be crushed in an instant by the strength of number 4. However, they didn't expect that the latter would end up so tragically. Recalling the defeat of number 4, they swiftly turned their heads to take a look, and the sight before them caused their face to twitch, almost passing out on the spot. The young man before them totally ignored the magnificence of the artifact dealer and sent a kick upwards toward his dignity as a man cacker. The sound of egg breaking apart caused everyone's face to twitch uncontrollably. The next moment, the artifact dealer was sent flying as though he was a rubber ball, crashing into a wall not too far away, forming a word. Initially, it should have been a word, but from the looks of it, there probably wasn't a chance for it anymore. Incredible. Seeing how he was able to easily kick away the Pixie realm artifact dealer who was in the midst of executing his battle technique, Zhang Xuan nodded his head in approval. Even though his physical body was significantly stronger than the other party was skilled in fighting techniques and also possessed great speed. If Zhang Xuan fought normally, he would have had to resort to several means to cripple him, and even so, it would have taken several blows to do it. However, with the Library of Heaven's Path, he was able to clearly see through the flaws of the other party. As such, subduing him became an easy task. With a single kick the bird flew away and the egg shattered. Even if he was a Pixie realm expert, he wasn't too far off from death from that kick. Something is amiss about this lad. Let's attack him together. Seeing Zhang Xuan smack number 4 into the ground and kick number 2 to the point that he no longer possessed his lower companion, no matter how foolish Master Mo Yang could be, he clearly understood that the lad before him wasn't simple, and his previous contemptuous gaze hardened. Hualala. Upon hearing the orders, even though the remaining few were sweating profusely and a numbing sensation pervaded their crotches, they dared not disobey the orders and stepped forward to encircle Zhang Xuan. Go. With a bellow, the remaining few immediately charged forward. All kinds of powerful attacks fell relentlessly onto Zhang Xuan. Their Zenki gushed through their meridians, and the might of their attacks generated powerful shock waves. Just like the previous number 4, the rest of them were all Fighter 5 and Dinglai realm experts. Despite the fact that they outnumbered Zhang Xuan, due to his ability to see through the flaws of others and his Pixie realm pinnacle level fighting prowess, they did not pose a threat to him at all. Something is not right. Why are there only these few attacks? Parrying all of the attacks that came flying towards him, a thought suddenly flashed through Zhang Xuan's mind, causing him to pause for a moment. The artifact dealer, who was only the number 2 in their midst, possessed the strength of Pixie realm. Logically speaking, the fake Master Mo Yang should be significantly stronger than him. However, why was he not attacking with the rest of the lot? If he were to attack, perhaps Zhang Xuan might have a difficult time coping with the attacks. Just as he was bewildered over the bizarre situation, he noticed a figure who had already retreated 10 meters away in the midst of his escape. He shouted, "You all kill him, I'll be back soon." Hearing these words, the attacking crowd staggered. There was no need to guess the situation. It was clear to see that their boss, upon sensing that the situation had gone awry, had abandoned them and fled. Shameless! Zhang Xuan shouted in surprising harmony with the rest of the supports. Just a moment ago, he was still bellowing so righteously, yet, at the next moment, he turned around to flee, leaving his subordinates in a lurch. No wonder he was able to escape the pursuit of Loza Kingdom. He is simply way too shameless to be caught that easily. Chapter 57, Storage Ring. You won't get away that easily. This fellow had Zhang Xuan surrounded, and demanded him to kneel down and compensate him naturally. Zhang Xuan couldn't possibly let him off the hook so easily. Zhang Xuan did a quick job out of the several Fighter 5 and Dinglai Realm Pinnacle supports, and after turning his body around, he headed straight for the Master Mo Yang ahead of him. With the significant breakthrough in the strength of his physical body, Zhang Xuan's body movement was reminiscent of a frog. Every single time the base of his foot came into contact with the ground, he would fly 10 meters forward despite not possessing any footwork techniques. His speed was already swift like a rock. The heck? The frantically escaping Master Mo Yang turned his head, just to see the other party flitting towards him with large strides. His movement similar to that of the immortals. The overwhelming shock caused him to forget to breathe for a split moment, almost making himself tumble over. He thought that Zhang Xuan was a lamb that he could easily squeeze to death, so he fervently hunted him down to wash away the shame from the incident earlier this day. Yet, never did he expect that he would run into a lion's den. If only he knew that Zhang Xuan was that formidable, he would have never come looking for him. Judging from how young that fellow was, even if he started training inside his mother's womb, it was still illogical for his strength to rise that quickly. Master Mo Yang felt endless regret, to the point that even the thought of suicide popped up in his head. If only his mouth wasn't that inauspicious for him to pick out that fellow out of the entire crowd when he was scamming others in the treasure speculation hall. The other party would not have exposed his deeds, and he could have walked out of the hall pompously under the gazes of respect from the crowd. Despite scamming their money even after his ploy was exposed, he could have just escaped the capital, and nothing would have happened yet. He just had to decide on exacting vengeance now. Not only did he fail to exact vengeance, on the contrary, he became the one who was being chased like a weakling. What the heck is this? Truly, if one doesn't dedicate one's soul to committing suicide, one wouldn't die. My heart. Despite being just 19, Zhang Xuan had cultivated the Heaven's Path Divine Art and Heaven's Path Golden Body. His body had been nourished by Zenki and cleared of all impurities, his bones tempered and forged anew, causing him to look younger than his real age at one look. He looked barely 17 or 18, at such an age, an average person would only be at Fighter 1 Dan or 2 Dan. Yet, the moment they all made a move, it was clear to see that not even with all of them combined could they match up with Zhang Xuan. Thus, it would actually be more bizarre if he didn't choose to escape. Stop. While complaining in his mind, he felt a stifling sensation in his chest, following which, a flat voice sounded from his back. Peng. Before he could turn around to counterattack, he felt a sharp pain at the center of his spinal cord. He stumbled forward, and with his face in contact with the ground, he flew forward, creating a deep gorge on the ground in his track. My face. Master Mo Yang was on the verge of tears. Without taking a look, it was clear that his face was already ruined. Caca. As though not sparing a moment for him to wallow in self-pity, a foot stepped on his head. You should have thought of the possibility of such an outcome when you came for my life. Zhang Xuan stepped on the head of the other party with an impassive expression. He had only been an ordinary librarian in his previous life. However, ever since becoming a part of this world, he had comprehended the logic of my training supreme here. If his strength turned out to be inadequate today, he might have possibly died already. Don't kill me, Lord. As long as you do not kill me, I am willing to hand over my years of savings to you. Clearly feeling the other party's ability to crush his head by exerting force through the foot that's on his head, Master Mo Yang trembled uncontrollably. Comparing money with life, it was clear that the latter was much more valuable. Oh? Show it to me, then I'll see if it is sufficient to buy your life. Zhang Xuan replied blandly. Yes, yes. Hearing the other party's words, Master Mo Yang hurriedly took off his ring with trembling fingers and presented it to Zhang Xuan. Everything is inside. I beseech Lord to take a look. Inside? Zhang Xuan frowned. What could be fitted into a ring? However, as an expert, he couldn't be posing such an inquiry to the other party. His mind jolted and a book appeared. Low-tier storage ring possesses 3 meters square of space within floors. Inferior method of creation. The book described the details of the ring thoroughly. Storage ring? To think that a giant fraudster like him would possess such a good item. Looks like I've made a huge earning this time. When browsing through the books in the Academy's Compendium Pavilion, he became aware of the existence of the Mountain in a Seed mystical treasure. Initially, he thought that it was a treasure that was far from his reach. To think that this fellow possessed it. Even though it was a low-tier storage ring, it should be worth at least 500,000 gold coins. Even the elders of the Academy might not be able to afford such a luxury. He couldn't help but feel surprised by a fraudster possessing such an item. However, after giving this matter some thoughts, he came to a realization: without this item, how could he bring away the money he earned? If he were to carry the stack of money around, it would just be a matter of time before he got discovered, caught and executed. Looks like this fellow had spent much of his fortune just to buy this. As Zhang Xuan expected, a face of heartache appeared on the face of the other party as he passed the object over. Recalling the details of storage rings in the book he had read regarding it previously, he dripped a drop of fresh blood on it. Wang. With a jolt of his mind, a 3-meter square space appeared in his vision. It was filled with gold coins, numbering up to 100,000. His character might be subpar, but he did have quite a bit of saving. Lord, since you have accepted the item, I beg you to spare my life. Seeing the young man, Master Mo Yang hurriedly said, spare your life? It is not impossible for me to do that if you hand over the banknotes that you have secretly hidden on your body. Sparing you is just a small matter. Zhang Xuan looked at him with a bright smile. You, with narrowed eyes. Master Mo Yang looked as though he had met a ghost as disbelief shrouded his features. A cunning rabbit had 3 burrows. As an experienced scammer, he had already prepared a course of action in case he got captured. Thus, when he was running away, he secretly moved to his body the banknotes he had accumulated throughout the years. This was also the reason why he generously offered his storage ring over. The goal of it was to numb the other party so that he wouldn't conduct a body search on him. As long as he was able to get away safely, even if he lost the storage ring and the wealth stored within it, with such banknotes in his possession, he would be able to live without worries as a wealthy man and start anew. He thought that his actions were extremely covert. He couldn't have imagined that this young-looking man had seen through his actions from the start. How did he know? Even if he was powerful, it was impossible for him to see through his clothes and notice the banknotes hidden within. Huala couldn't be bothered to argue with the other party. With that law, Zhang Xuan ripped apart his clothes, and in accordance with his expectations, 10 banknotes exposed themselves between the tattered clothes. Each of them was worth 100,000, and they added up to a massive sum of 1 million. Looks like I have made a huge profit this time. Delighted to see the enormous amount of money, Zhang Xuan's eyes radiated light. I have given you all my money, so you can let me go now. Seeing how the other party was aware even of his hidden stash, Master Mo Yang became disconsolate. His previous haughty aura gone without a trace as cries threatened to escape from his throat. He Yang Mo, an apprentice appraiser race scammer in Lazar Kingdom who made his name as an appraiser, notorious for his frauds to earn wealth in the favor of women, skilled in voice of allurement, which beguiles the mind of others through words, making it easier to convince them. Zhang Xuan's foot remained firmly on his head as he revealed the information compiled on this master from the library with a smiling face. You, how did you know? Who the hell are you? Master Mo Yang's eyes narrowed as his whole body trembled intensely, fear reflected on his face. Chapter 58. How did he do it? A moment ago when his hidden stash was exposed by Zhang Xuan, he panicked, but a portion of it was still faint. However, the current fear that he was expressing on his face at this very moment was completely real. He felt a chill rushing down through his body, threatening to freeze him into a snowman. It wouldn't be weird if the other party could identify him. After all, he could be considered a wanted serial offender, so there's always the possibility of an attentive person seeing through his disguise. However, the fact that he practiced the voice of allurement was something that not even Lao and the rest are aware of. Furthermore, he had not dared reveal the fact to anyone, so how could this fellow be aware of it? This was a secret manual that he attained with much difficulty. During a chance encounter he had hidden this fact in the depths of his heart, and he could proudly declare that not a second person in this world knew of this secret yet. The other party was aware of it. The overwhelming shock he was feeling at the moment was about to scare him to death. There were many kinds of secret manuals. There were those on the physical body, battle techniques, cultivation techniques. However, most of these could be found easily if one had to talk about their most valuable secret manuals in the entire kingdom. Most probably, the position would have to go to those regarding secret arts that affects one's psyche. Voice of allurement was an extremely low-tier psyche secret art. However, no matter how low-tier it was still an attack on one's psyche once it was executed. No matter how powerful a person was, if they were unprepared, they would still fall for it. Previously, he had been captured by a Fighter 7 Dan expert. He relied on this to coax the other party into sparing his life. The reason why he intentionally begged for his life was to numb the other party through such a method. Never would he have expected that not only was the other party unaffected by his tricks, he seemed to be omniscient, as though nothing about him could escape his notice. Before Zhang Xuan, he felt his facade falling off, and that he was standing buck naked before him, without a single concealment. How could he possibly not feel anxious? If he was afraid a moment ago, then right now, he was feeling terror-stricken. You don't have to bother how I was made aware of these. You just have to know that these aren't the only things I am aware of, your Mingmen and such. I am also cognizant of them. I can spare you, but from today onwards, if I were to find out that you are still scamming others, bringing harm onto others, death would be the only thing that awaits you. Stopping there, Zhang Xuan kicked the other party's body. Kaka. The sound of an egg shattering the scammer Yang Mo sensed a resounding blast from his dungeon, and the strength derived from his many years of cultivation seeped away. Without strength, he dared not scam others even if he wanted to. My cultivation. Sensing the loss of his strength, Yang Mo was filled with hatred, but he did not dare to snap at him. The other party was simply too frightening. He was no human, but a demon. How could he possibly dare to retaliate when it's a demon who broke his dungeon and ruined his cultivation? Scram. After receiving his benefits and dealing with the scammer, Zhang Xuan walked back to the academy with widened strides. The other party was just a scammer. He wasn't worth soiling his hands over. It was already around 1 in the morning by the time he reached his dormitory. However, Zhang Xuan wasn't fatigued at all. Too many things had happened tonight, with events coming one after another. If it wasn't for the godly cheat library of Heaven's Path, Zhang Xuan would have been at a loss from dealing with those situations. Let's see if I can organize those Fighter 6 Dan cultivation technique manuals that I got from Master Lu Chen. Back then, he was too preoccupied with cultivating the Heaven's Path golden body, so he had yet to take a good look at the Fighter 6 Dan cultivation techniques. Now that he had free time, it was a good opportunity for him to examine them. Soon, the correct cultivation method of the dozen or so secret manuals were extracted. However, taking a look at it, Zhang Xuan felt his head bloating up. They aren't connected with one another in the least. If I were to cultivate this, my cultivation would definitely go berserk and I will die. Zhang Xuan shook his head helplessly. He might have a dozen secret manuals in his possession, but there were still too many flaws in it. Even if he were to extract the correct methods from them, he was still unable to form a complete cultivation technique set. In fact, the cultivation technique set formed would be filled with even more gaps, making it impossible to cultivate it. Forget it, I better find a way to look for more manuals first. Knowing that the cultivation technique could not be used, Zhang Xuan didn't panic. Instead, he recultivated the cultivation techniques of the first 3 dans compiled by the library. Only after ensuring that his cultivation had completely integrated as one did he go to sleep. Zhang Xuan didn't know that in the period that he went to the market to purchase items in the academy, Elder Shang Chen's backyard was on the verge of exploding. "Grandfather, you have to redress my grievances." With tears and snot flowing down his face, Shang Bin's cry trembled even the heavens. As the grandson of an elder, he was born with a golden spoon in his mouth. Furthermore, being talented, he had always been respected by others, yet he had suffered all the setbacks he had never suffered in his whole life. Today it was already a great blessing that he had yet to go insane. When bringing trouble upon someone, a lunatic dashed out and beat him up to a pighead. When going out for dinner, he saw his goddess dining happily with that lad. He could still take it if his framing failed and if he embarrassed himself. "But, grandfather, didn't you say that this sky-shattering lion is very obedient? I ordered it to teach that useless Zhang Xuan a lesson, but not only did it not obey my orders, it even beat me up instead." The more he thought about it, the more furious he got. At this moment, Shang Bin was full of tears for himself. This sky-shattering lion before him had been squandering off his family, yet, at a crucial period, not only did it not obey orders, it even helped an outsider to assault him. He felt like tearing his hair out whenever he thought about it. It is usually rather obedient. Shang Chen felt a little awkward. He looked at the sky-shattering lion in front of him with a puzzled expression. He was just a normal beast tamer, and his expertise in the field wasn't particularly high. Even if he were to tame savage beasts, he could only interact with them on equal footing and not that of a master and servant. This was precisely why the sky-shattering lion need not bother about his emotions and second-guess his thoughts whenever it wanted to do something. However, no matter what, they were contractually related to one another. After asking it to protect his grandson, why did it listen to the words of the outsider and assault Shang Bin instead? Roar. Upon noticing Shang Bin, the sky-shattering lion held its head up high with a proud expression on its face, seemingly proud of its deed. Seeing the expression on the sky-shattering lion, Shang Bin received another 10,000 damage internally. When it was with Zhang Xuan, it licked the other party's hand affectionately and treated him respectfully, as though a pug. Yet now, it was acting as haughty as a king. The heck, is my grandfather your owner, or he is? Cough cough. I'll persuade the sky-shattering lion later when I get back. Seeing his beast pet behaving like this, clearly rejecting cooperation with him, Elder Shang Chen's face turned red as he waved away the matter. "Grandfather, this time, you have to teach this Zhang Xuan a lesson in my stead. It would be best if his teaching license is revoked and he is chased out of the academy." Knowing that his grandfather and the sky-shattering lion were of equal standing in their contract and was unable to teach it a lesson, Shang Bin didn't dawdle on the matter and, gritting his teeth, diverted the topic towards Zhang Xuan. A trash who scored a 0 in the teacher qualification examination had caused him so much embarrassment and left innumerable wounds all over his body, causing him to almost die. Even this kind of grudge could not be washed away even by the rapid flow of the river. "Rest assured, I will settle this matter." But this Zhang Xuan, who knows what kind of luck did he stumble over? He actually managed to recruit 5 students without a reasonable excuse. "Even for me, it will be difficult to expel a registered teacher," Elder Shang Chen said. Registered with the Continent's Teacher Guild, Zhang Xuan could be considered formally as a teacher, even as an elder of the academy, the head of the education bureau, as long as the other party didn't sin deeply. He had no rights to expel him. While shaking his head, doubt flashed across his eyes. As a fellow who scored 0 in the teacher qualification examination, everyone thought that it would be impossible for any student to acknowledge him. Yet, contrary to their expectations, not only did students acknowledge him, there were even 5 of them. Furthermore, a few of them were within the top 100. No one would have thought it possible if they didn't witness it for themselves. In fact, despite seeing the results compiled by the Education Bureau, he still found it unbelievable. This fellow, how did he do it? It is totally irrational, isn't it? Chapter 59, The Frenzied Students. The Frenzied Students. I have already found an excuse for grandfather to take action. Cao Xunloshi has a student named Liu Yang, and this Liu Yang was coerced by Zhang Xuan to become his student. Cao Xunloshi has already applied for an enlightenment will trial, which will be conducted tomorrow. By then, as long as grandfather makes a move, it would be an easy task to strip him of his license. Shang Bin squeezed these words through gritted teeth. The deception Cao Xun spoke of turned into coercion through his words. There was a world of difference between these two words. Deception only meant that there's something wrong with that person's personality. On the other hand, coercion was a matter of morals. Coercion? Are you sure? Elder Shang Chen was taken aback. I'm sure. Shang Bin nodded his head affirmatively. If that's the case, how about this? Tomorrow, I will invite Elder Mo over for him to witness the process. If the result of the enlightenment will trial shows that Liu Yang did not willingly become his student, then there is the possibility for him to be stripped of his teaching license. After hesitating for a moment, Elder Shang Chen said, "Thank you, grandfather." Excitement shone in Shang Bin's eyes. With the presence of teachers came qualifications, and the organization that protected the identity of teachers was the Teacher Guild. The guild had the authority to inspect the actions of teachers, as well as to strip them of their license. There was a similar organization called the Ministry of Education in Zhang Xuan's previous world. Teachers were role models to guide a student along their path. They must first make the students concede to them, so that they were willing to learn from them. If they were to coerce them, thus causing the student to be jaundiced, it was possible for their licenses to be revoked. As for how to gauge whether one was truly willing to become the student of a teacher, the enlightenment will trial was the most impartial method. Brat, you might be gleeful now, but let's see how you can continue being so arrogant when your teaching license is revoked tomorrow. Upon the thought that he would be able to exact vengeance for all of the grudges in the past, Shang Bin clenched his fist subconsciously and a surge of exhilaration ran through his body. Zhang Xuan didn't know that someone had already set up a ploy against him after a night of rest. He felt energized looking into the mirror. He noticed that after cultivating the Heaven's Path golden body yesterday, his body became even whiter and smoother, similar to that of an infant. There wasn't a single scar or such on his body overall. He looked much younger as well. Those who were oblivious to his identity might even think that he was a student. Not bad, he said, before heading to the classroom with giant strides. Arriving at the classroom, the first thing he noticed was that the interiors of the room had been cleaned spick and span by his 5 students, and even the drinking water had already been boiled. Wang Ying, Liu Yang, Zheng Yang, Zhao Yan and Yuan Tao were all energized. All of them stared at Zhang Xuan with looks of reverence and excitement. Initially, these few students had all thought that they were deceived into acknowledging a fellow who was last in the teacher qualification examination as their teacher. However, after the lesson yesterday, they realized that even though his reputation was terrible, he was, indubitably, an incredibly capable figure. This feeling resonated especially so for Wang Ying. After reciting those theories her teacher spoke of to her father and the elders of the family, they were all filled with praises for him. In fact, there were even some parts of it that they were incapable of comprehending, after which, they insisted in bringing Wang Tao over to acknowledge him as his teacher. From this incident itself, his standards were clear to see. How could one not feel excited upon having such a person as their teacher? Seems like everything is in order today. Zhao Ya, take this medicinal herb, crush it into powder and swallow it along with water also. This is a cultivation technique that I have just handwritten. If you cultivate by the methods written on it, you should be able to fully recover in 3 days or so. Seeing the expressions reflected in everyone's eyes, it was impossible for Zhang Xuan to not know what they were thinking. Nodding his head, he passed the frigid sun mother grass, which he bought yesterday night, and a book to Zhao Ya. Zhao Ya's illness was caused by her cultivation of a pure yin cultivation technique. After browsing through all of the books in the teacher's compendium pavilion, Zhang Xuan used the library of Heaven's Path to derive a solution for her problem. Even though the cultivation technique paled far in comparison to his Heaven's Path divine art, it was still a skill derived from the extraction of the essence of 10 different books, and it was extraordinarily valuable. There were still flaws within it, but the remaining ones didn't really affect the whole situation. Yes. Zhao Ya grabbed the medicinal herb and placed it into her embrace. Before casually flipping open the book, she noticed that the ink was still fresh, and it was clear that it was just written. After taking a brief look at it, her eyes narrowed and she looked at him in disbelief. Zhang Loshi, although I am new here, I have heard of most of the renowned secret manuals in the academy. This manual is several times more incredible than my White Jade Pure Maiden skill. Why have I never heard of it? Furthermore, why isn't there a name on this book? As the daughter of a city lord, Zhao Ya had a massive collection of books in her home. She had browsed through many different secret manuals, which helped build her eye of discernment. This book in her hand was clearly several folds stronger than the White Jade Pure Maiden skill that she cultivated before. However, why had she never heard of it? Whenever one copied a cultivation technique, one would always write the name of the creator on it. However, not a trace of information on its creator could be seen on this book, causing Zhao Ya to be puzzled. Oh, this book is something that I have just compiled and wrote down based on your physical condition, so there's no name for it. If you find it difficult to refer to it like that, you can name it as you like. Zhang Xuan said. The Library of Heaven's Path extracted the correct portions of each secret manual and compiled them into a book. The book that was compiled by the library did not have a name, and he couldn't be bothered to name it either. Thus, he passed it to her right after he casually copied it down. He didn't expect for Zhao Ya to ask about it. Thus, he answered it casually. What? Teacher wrote it himself? This means this is a cultivation technique created by teacher? Not only Zhao Ya was taken aback, the others also narrowed their eyes and all of them nearly passed out on the spot. Every single one of those who managed to successfully create a cultivation technique was grandmaster level figures, experts who left a mark in history. For their obscure teacher to be capable of creating a cultivation technique, not to mention such an advanced one. Are you for it? You can say so. The Library of Heaven's Path could not be explained, and these books came out of nowhere. Thus, it didn't matter whether Zhang Xuan said if he was the one who created them or not. Thinking nothing about it, he casually nodded his head. Incredible. White Jade Pure Maiden skill. This skill was created by a fighter 8 Dan Zongshi realm expert in our family. For teacher to be able to create a cultivation technique of much higher tier than this so easily. Exactly how strong is he? Seeing him admit to it, the 5 students found themselves on the verge of going insane. Since the inception of Hongshan Academy, there had been less than a few who had successfully created a cultivation technique throughout its century of history. Every single one of them was reputable and influential figures, yet their own teacher was capable of the very same feat as well. They found themselves giddy-headed from the reverence they were feeling towards him. Furthermore, the most important of all, what did Zhang Loshi just say? He said that if you find it difficult to refer to it like that, you can name it as you like. The heck? Every master went through a lot just to create their own cultivation technique. Thus, they viewed it as their treasure and only passed it down to their main disciples. Yet, after creating a cultivation technique, not only did this Zhang Loshi freely gift it to others, he was even lazy to name them, allowing his students to name them as they pleased. One must know that the future generations tend to only remember the one who named the skill, rather than the creator himself. Such an opportunity to leave his mark in history, but he wasn't bothered by it in the least. Isn't he way too indifferent to material successes? One's conduct can't get any nobler than that. No wonder Zhang Loshi still remains an obscure figure despite being so capable, even carrying the notoriety as the worst teacher in the academy. To think that he would be such a noble person, a person who views fame as dirt. Zhang Loshi. Upon thinking about these, the eyes of the 5 students reddened. They were so moved that they were on the verge of bursting into tears. What's wrong with you all? Seeing his students who were still acting normally a moment ago suddenly staring at him with reddened eyes, Zhang Xuan was confused. These students, could they have gone mad at the same time? Chapter 60, The Greatest Person. Zhang Xuan was a transcender, so how could he have known that creating a cultivation technique would result in such astonishment and commotion? As such, he was unable to understand the reason behind the expressions of the students with a calm face. He took out another book. Liu Yang, this manual is something I just wrote based on your situation. Cultivate according to it, and your right hand should recover completely within half a month or so. Before anyone could even react, he took out a few more books again and passed them over. Yuan Tao, you have good defensive abilities. The book I passed you the previous time is your fundamental cultivation technique, while this one is aimed at improving your defensive abilities. Wang Ying and Zheng Yang as well. I have compiled your unique characteristics and wrote a book for you two each. If you two were to train according to it, your cultivation should rise swiftly. Since they were all his students, naturally, he couldn't favor one more than the other. Thus, there was a gift for every one of them. These cultivation techniques were made from combining multiple secret manuals from the teacher's compendium pavilion using the Library of Heaven's Path. They were tailored specially for Wang Ying, Liu Yang and the rest of them based on their physical conditions. There were still flaws in there, but there were significantly less of them compared to the other secret manuals. These secret manuals, what an impressive cultivation technique. Regardless of whether it is Wang Ying, Liu Yang or Zheng Yang, they were all people who were capable of telling the value of a manual just by taking a look at these nameless manuals. All of them trembled vigorously in agitation. The manuals could be said to be tailored perfectly to them, not to mention how incredibly high-tiered they are comparing the manuals they just received with the ones they cultivated before. The other ones were like trash amongst all trash. There was totally no way to put the both of them together. Teacher, these books, we are allowed to name them? Unable to hold it in anymore, Wang Ying asked. Feel free to do so. Zhang Xuan waved his hand. His students stared at one another, their fists subconsciously clenched tightly together. Writing a single cultivation technique was already an incredible feat, yet to write 5 of them, and each one was tailored for each of them, even allowing them to name their technique themselves. This capability and this generosity, it was unheard of in the entire Hongshan Academy. The crux of it all was that these cultivation techniques were made specially to cater to their needs. No matter how vast one's knowledge was and how enlightened one was towards the path of cultivation, they would have surely expended a lot of effort to create them. It was very likely that he hadn't slept for the entire night. Their teacher stayed awake for the entire night to toil on these cultivation techniques for them, and yet they doubted if their teacher possessed the abilities to guide them. This was too. The eyes of the crowd turned red again. This sentiment was equivalent to changing their entire lives. Thank you, teacher. The 5 of them knelt down simultaneously, staring at Zhang Xuan, who was standing before them. Unwavering determination appeared in their eyes. Zhang Loshi, rest easy. We promise to never divulge these cultivation techniques outwards. Whoever divulges them will receive any type of punishment you mete out willingly. Never divulge them. All right. These cultivation techniques created using the Library of Heaven's Path paled far in comparison to the Heaven's Path divine art. So Zhang Xuan wasn't too bothered about it at this moment. Hearing his students say these words, he agreed with it nonchalantly. This is the disposition of a true master. Seeing Zhang Loshi indifferent to this matter, the students conceded to him willingly. What is a master? This is. Who is the greatest person? He is. To be capable but humble, misunderstood but unfazed, humiliated but composed and calm in the face of sudden situations. To have such a teacher is a tremendous blessing of theirs. Zhang Xuan didn't know that in this moment, he had already ascended from the ranks of a mortal to a god within the hearts of his students after instructing everyone to cultivate as soon as possible. Zhang Xuan was free once more. A teacher should not be keeping a watch on his students, but rather, allow them to train and learn by themselves. A teacher was only responsible for pointing out their faults and direct them towards the correct path. Now that all of them have suitable cultivation techniques, as long as they cultivated as per normal, they would be able to achieve acceptable results. Hesitation appeared on Shenbairu's flawless face, however. Thinking about the wonders the young man showed her yesterday, her curiosity burned once more and she determinedly walked over. She was the goddess of the academy, the idol of all male teachers and students every day. The number of flowers and presents the teachers and students gifted her was countless. Even so, she was nonchalant to it and never tried to approach a teacher of the opposite sex of her own accord. However, the young man yesterday attracted her as though a mystery, causing her to walk over without any say on the matter. In fact, she wasn't even able to conduct a lesson properly this morning due to it. I'm just going over to expose him. There isn't any other reason to it. Finding an excuse for herself, she heaved a sigh of relief and proceeded forward in large strides. Speaking of this Zhang Xuan Loshi, she had known him since a long time ago. However, as she never really interacted with him, she wasn't too knowledgeable of his affairs. Even so, based on the descriptions of others, there were only 3 adjectives to describe him: worst, worst, and finally, still worst. He was reputed for being the worst teacher in the academy. All along, she had thought so as well. However, yesterday, her thoughts were overturned. He could remember all the contents of a book just by casually flipping through it. Despite scoring a 0 in his teacher qualification examination, he was able to come up with multiple answers for the questions in it just by eating a meal. She realized that he was a gourmet. Furthermore, to be able to persuade the sky-shattering lion to listen to him so easily, what used to be the worst teacher in her eyes became an enigma. Incomprehension clouded over her no matter how she contemplated over it. Forget it. I will stop thinking about it today. I will definitely get an answer out of him. Harumphing coldly, she raised her jade-like face. Only then did she realize that she was already standing right before Zhang Xuan's classroom. Just as she was about to enter, she saw a mummy-like person standing outside the door. Yao Han was in a dilemma. Yesterday, when he made a move and roared publicly at Zhang Xuan in the classroom, he was reprimanded by the young mistress when they returned. After which, when he returned back to his dwelling at night, he thought about the matter and rage welled up in him. The origin of this mess was the trash of a teacher, Zhang Xuan. If not for him committing something indecent to the young mistress, causing the young mistress to be blackmailed by him, how could her face blush completely red as she insisted on becoming his student? If not for that, he wouldn't have been beaten up to such a state when he went over to assault him at night. Unable to persuade his young mistress, his original intention was to inform the city lord of the matter, so that he could step forth and settle the issue. However, Bai City was a long distance away, and even the best horse would take at least half a month for a two-way journey if he were to really leave. What if that beast of a teacher were to do something immoral? If so, even if he were to die, it would be hard for him to swallow the blame. What should I do? Young mistress would definitely be unhappy with me if I were to barge in right now. However, if I do not barge in, she might get bullied and hurt. Just like that, Yao Han stood at the entrance for a very long time, perplexed. Who are you? While he was still in a dilemma between the two course of action to take, an Oriole-like voice sounded. Lifting his head to take a look, he saw a beautiful lady standing at a short distance away looking at him with a puzzled expression. This beautiful lady was around 20-year-old or so. She was dressed in a light purple robe, which brought out her elegant figure perfectly with skin as smooth as cream. Despite not moving much, she was still absolutely gorgeous. I don't think that there's any need for me to tell you who I am. No matter what, Yao Han was a veteran who had experienced the harsh world. Thus, he recovered quickly and harumphed. You are just a little girl while I am the butler of Bai City Lord's residence. Are you worthy of having me report my identity to you? Besides, most importantly of all, how can I dare to proclaim my identity in such a state, refusing to identify yourself? What do you intend to do here by covering your face then? The beautiful lady frowned. Her heart suddenly pounded and a thought flashed through her mind. This fellow, it can't be that he is hired by Shang Bin to teach Zhang Xuan a lesson.